Welcome to episode 41 of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about my new ebook. It's called Hockey Analytics 2024 edition. And I wanted to get to some different perspectives regarding the ebook. And obviously, it's a new release and there's a lot to be excited about with it. But I want to go over briefly what the ebook is about and why I targeted analytics. So, in terms of ebooks in general, I released one last year. It's called Guide to Scouting 2023 edition. And that was my first release, and obviously very passionate about scouting, very passionate about analytics. So I wanted to do something that was separate between the books, create separate books, and I felt like this was a good time to release the Hockey Analytics Edition one this year and today. So it's really exciting, obviously. And in terms of the analytics that we mentioned there, there's a lot mentioned regarding evolving data, the differentiation between the eye test and analytics in and of itself, because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in just using the eye test and not using analytics, or the other way around as well. And the best mix is to have a little bit of a hybrid between both and to be able to combine the two in different perspectives. So that way there's a balance, and also there's perspective on both what you see with the raw eye and what you see with the raw data as well. So that's really important when talking about analytics, and something I briefly went over throughout this book. And there's also analytics talking about total ice time, there's zone starts, so D zone, O zone starts, that type of thing. And there's many other different situations in terms of measuring defensive zone time and O zone time. So how much possession time there is in the D zone and the O zone for certain teams, and how well teams and players adapt to that as well. And I also mentioned how Corsi is flawed as well throughout the book. And that's a big thing that I wanted to touch on, because Corsi is, you have a very wide domain of data when you're talking about Corsi, because you're getting all sorts of shot attempt numbers, and you're getting shot attempt numbers without emphasis on creating shots from interior space and actual shots on net. So the domain is very wide in terms of Corsi, and that makes it a little flawed in that sense because of how overestimated that analytic can be in terms of driving possession, because it's not necessarily a possession driver. It's more of an actual number to guarantee how teams are generating shot attempts, and in many different ways as well. So Corsi is something that's a really interesting touch point. And then you get to Fenwick, where we talked about Fenwick in the book a little bit, and that obviously mitigates some of the effects of Corsi, where Fenwick measures mainly shots on goal and the actual shots that go on net. So that can be for and against. So that it narrows the domain of the analytics slightly more compared to Corsi, where Corsi is wider, and you obviously have all forms of shot attempts. With Fenwick, you're getting mainly shots on goal as a measure. So that's really nice in terms of measuring per 60, Fenwick against per 60, Fenwick for per 60, and also analyzing the Fenwick percentages, the actual percentages. So obviously anything over 50% offensively is better. And usually 51-49 in favor of the offensive team is better. And 60% is usually where you're getting elite Fenwick numbers offensively. But again, Fenwick is still in that same range with Corsi, where it can be still sometimes be a little flawed. We also mention and talk about PDO and save percentage and the relativity regarding both and the importance of both. Save percentage is obviously a very basic one, shooting percentage as well, we mentioned. And sometimes players can generate a lot of goals on so few amount of shots. So sometimes it's a really interesting case study in terms of those players. And what's really nice, and one of the things I really like to talk about in this book as well, is the importance of neutral zone play and transition data. And that's something that's going to continue to evolve heading into the future. There's not much out there right now, but there's going to be a lot more heading in the future for sure, with puck possession tracking, player tracking, team tracking, and overall analytical tracking, not only from exits and entries, but linking those two together and what actually goes on inside the neutral zone as part of that study. So importance of zone entries is really important. And then we get to some playmaking analysis numbers like shot assists, and shooting off the catch is a big important factor when being able to create in today's NHL. So shot assists and being able to create with an efficient amount of passes can really help a team and a player individually drive their own play. Expected goals is another big one. We look at XG in terms of relativity for teams and players. We look at XG in terms of it being for and against. And we also look at the actual percentages of expected goals as well. So that's really important in talking about expected goals and those numbers. And there's some emphasis on low danger, medium danger, high danger shot attempts slash goals throughout this book. So there's various touch points on that. And that's really important when talking about the modern day emphasis in terms of creating from interior space and being able to understand how to create many different situations as well. And there's a lot more analytics in terms of understanding angular play, distance in terms of shots on goal. So being able to understand how angles affect shots. If a player is shooting from a much narrower angle compared to an angle where it's, say, in the slot area where it's much clearer of a chance to generate off of that. That's a really interesting one as well. And then obviously some defensive numbers, their shots blocked and some other stuff along the lines of that as well. And going back to XG and expected goals a little bit, high danger expected goals is one of the stats I like to study the most of anything because high danger expected goals really touches on players who are able to generate shots from interior space, and the expected goal model factors that in a really high manner. So the percentages and the actual likelihood of the shots going in from those spaces is very high. It's usually, depending on the area, it's usually over 60%. So you're getting at least 60-40 in terms of being able to generate favorable outcomes and generating goals in the attacker's favor as well. And obviously zone entries are very important. We touched that on that as well. And being able to generate successful entries, and that's a really important one. And it's not just about understanding the quantity of zone entries, more so the quality of them and how many of them are successful and how many of them are carries and how many of them lead to efficient offensive zone attacks and sustained ozone possession. So that's really important when we talk about that. And there was also some forechecking numbers briefly mentioned in terms of dump and recovery rate. And that's an interesting one because there's not too much raw data on that out there that's publicly available. But being able to cover dump ins and being able to understand how to leverage that's really important because being able to forecheck based on angles, cutting the ice in half, and being able to get to retrievals and pucks first is really important to not only generating a forecheck retrieval, but being able to create ozone possession out of that as well. And then we talk about some other things in terms of neutral zone transition speed and lateral playmaking elements like east-west entries. I like studying east-west entries and east-west neutral zone play because neutral zone play moving laterally in the neutral zone, it can be sometimes tricky to evaluate because you'd want an efficient attack, you want an efficient transition, and as quick as possible. So ideally, play doesn't get slowed down as much using east-west play, and players are able to activate in a timely manner using speed, puck skills, and speed differential within their skating to be able to generate entries much faster. So that's the efficient way of doing that rather than trying to pass consistently and pass all over the ice moving laterally. And we talked about zone entries more. There's pass completion data and high danger pass completion. The differentiation to being that completing passes in high danger areas. Again, it links together potential higher quality scoring chances and higher quality passing opportunities as well. So that's really important emphasis when talking about high danger plays and stuff like that, and links together to pass accuracy and the overall completion of passes in all three zones of the ice. And coming out of D zone, in the neutral zone, and in the O zone, usually see more passes completed in D zone and O zone compared to neutral zone. But passing accuracy is obviously very important. And then you look at turnover rates, which is also mentioned throughout this, and the importance of turnovers in today's NHL and the importance of that. And There's also some block passes, inner slot shots, and slot shots by team. There's a lot of emphasis on interior analytics, creating and being able to generate from the interior of the ice using analytics. And that's a really important thing that I wanted to touch on throughout this book so consistently, is being able to generate interior. It's not just you can complete passes and you can complete them with accuracy. Are you able to complete those passes inside high danger areas? Are you able to generate shots from high danger areas? Are you able to maneuver on entry to get to high danger areas? A lot of that links together because high danger areas is pretty self-explanatory. It has high danger in it. You have the highest danger and highest likelihood of scoring from that area. So that's why there's so much emphasis throughout this book in terms of being able to generate from the inside and from interior space. And then the last part of the book touches on the future of hockey analytics. So this could be analytics in regards to strength training and resistance training. It could be nutritional factors. It could be player development. It could be video analysis. It could be coaching, and so many other different things and different strategies that can be analyzed. Game preparation is another one, and in-game tactical adjustments can be utilized because now teams and assistant coaches are mic'd up with the video coaches. So if the video coach sees something, they can mic down to the assistant coach on the bench and let them know if they need to make an adjustment or something along the lines of that. And so that's really important because it incorporates that raw video analysis into that evaluation process. You can even have analytics used for injury prevention and understanding transition data, stuff like that as well. And obviously understanding the impact of traditional scouting versus analytical scouting. That's the other touch point that I had in this book regarding analytics. And traditional scouting is still heavily relied upon, but there's so many analytics used on so many different platforms nowadays where it gives teams, players, coaches, any form of hockey ops member, it gives them insight into things that they can improve upon, things and little tweaks they can make, and so many other adjustments they can make, which is really nice and really nuanced within the modern day game as well.